Hello everyone and welcome back to another Total War Warhammer 3 video. I'm Redbeard and today we have a fun ranking video to take a break from my usual theory crafting work. Though I have plenty of that coming in the future, today's content will focus on who I think has the most interesting start positions for each race. I may give some honorable mentions and talk about the biggest losers as well, as we work our way through each race. Now remember, even though I will look at these semi-objectively, this is still an opinion-based video, and we are bound to disagree on some picks. Also, these are not necessarily the first ones I'll try out, but the ones that at launch will be the most interesting to myself. So who are they? Let's get into it. So quick note, for the rest of this video, I'll be using this more detailed semi-topographical map with smaller faction banners that's been floating around Reddit. I just think it's easier on the eyes and the banners are less intrusive when I zoom in. So for the Empire, 3 lords have remained. 1 has a shiny new position. That shiny one, that's going to be my top pick. That's right, it's Volkmar the Grim. So often for me, that what makes these positions interesting is what you will be fighting, who are the quote-unquote ops. Volkmar will be the first Empire Lord with early Tomb King and Greater Demons opposition in the history of the series. He also neighbors Manfred, which assumedly will give you an early jump on his Dark Artifacts mechanics, if you take him out. From there, you might want to head west through Araby to claim Archon's Book of Nagash, or north to conquer the Black Pyramid or vanquish Setra. Or, if you have the cojones, Scarbrand. Better bring plenty of blessed bullets if that's your plan, though. Plenty of potential allies in Tic-Tac-Toe, Rapunzel, Thoric, and Teclis, if they survive long enough. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't mention how excited I am to summon the Electric Counts with Karl Franz, especially with some new enemies like Khazrak and Festus nearby, not to mention strong new Kislevite allies to the northeast. The reason I don't put him first is that, while I think the Empire rework in Game 2 was okay, it pales in comparison to, say, the Greenskins, Wood Elves, and Beastmen reworks. I want to go into the myriad of mechanics I think Empire should get in Game 3. Let me know in the comments if you would like to see that video sooner rather than later. Now, speaking of Game 3, I've said before that from the talk I've heard from the community for DLC Empire Lords, the top 2 are Marius Light Dwarf and Elspeth von Draken. Both are pretty tied to their territories, being Averland and Wissenland, respectively. Now, Balthazar Gelt is not tied to Solent, but he does have lore studying throughout the Southern Realms and Ulthuan. For this, he is one of today's biggest losers, and honestly, I'm surprised CA didn't have the foresight to move him. When I saw the Arana Mountains added, I thought it was a sure shot. If we see the Southern Realms expanded in a Dogs of War DLC, maybe he can be moved then. For Marcus, I'm glad he has a new neighbor and friend in Alberic. Co-op campaigns rejoice. For the Dowie, it's a super easy pick. It's Grombrindle. First off, he's my favorite dwarf character anyways. Second, I used to use the change start position mod and would land him in the Black Spine Mountains, sort of equidistant between Malekith and Ulthuan. I think I might have landed him in the ancient city of Quintex at one point, where Marathi starts. Third, now we've seen the map and all the start positions and that he's in the Iron Mountains. Now he has a good launch to get after all the elves, whether they be from the woods, have dark and cruel souls, or are high on their own supply. Many grudges will be settled once and for all when Immortal Empires drops. On top of all this, Valkia and Torok's neighbor Grombri in his starting province, which will make for quite the challenge as you fight to quell 2 rageful fronts. The only real possible ally will be Katep, but that's questionable. This could be one of the harder start positions in the game, but if anybody can handle it, it's our boy Gromby. Thoric would be my honorable mention, purely because of the Thunderdome. I think Belegar and even Thorgrim will become more interesting when the Karak 8 Peaks race gets a rework. Thorgrim purely because Skarsnik will now have to assumedly pass through his territory on the way to reclaim 8 Peaks. And after after this writing, I'm recording this, and I've seen some of the live streams of Immortal Empires, and just Thoric's area looks beautiful. I love the new elevation changes. That it is quite perceivable. The elevations, so it slopes down from Thoric's starting position towards where Manfred's starting position is. I just think that part is really cool. Also, another mention is I've seen most of the starting armies, and I think a lot of the changes for the starting armies are really good right now. But the Dwarves and Empire in particular, their armies are still a fucking mess. It's like one swordsman, one halberdier, one handgunner, one crossbow, one knight, one mortar. It's just a fucking mess. It should be 2 swords. I saw Volkmar as great swords. Why does Volkmar have great swords? Yeah. So, don't worry. I am going to be making my starting army rework mod soon. But I'll end that side run, back to the video. Speaking of the green boys, my pick is not Skarsnik, nor is it Grimgor. For both these guys, I'm excited for what their position means for the future more than what it currently offers. We won't have to wait long for the Chaos Dwarves race pack. When that releases, I plan on getting revenge on the sadistic Chaos Stunties for enslaving our green lads, or just creating them, and toppling their empire once and for all. Also, Kolek, being a neighbor, will make for an exciting opponent for the biggest and baddest of the orc kind. For Skarsnik, Belegar, Queek, I think I'm going to wait to play those guys at least a full campaign. I'm going to wait until the Karak 8 Peaks race gets a rework. CA has already said they're interested in doing that in the future, but have not done it yet. So, but now they're all 3 of them are in a prime. I think they're in a great location, each 3 of them, to make that more interesting when that does get a rework. So what is my pick for most interesting then? Azag the Slaughterer finally has the enemies I've been waiting for in the Kislevites. Not only that, but we also have a variety of new chaos enemies who will rue the day they drove Azag into the ruins of Todtheim, I think, where he would find and don the crown of sorcery. If there was a loser here, it would be Wurzag. While I like his start position, he has more lore to connect him to the Southlands than some of the Thunderdome lords. He has plenty of lore to still connect him to the Badlands and the Southlands, but he just has more than some of the Thunderdome lords. Kairos in particular would be better served in Lustria, whose west coast is fairly open, in my opinion. Big Bird attacking here is loreful as well. Additionally, this would open up the Badlands for future Greenskin content in lords such as Gorbad Ironclaw or Gorfang Rockcut. The former leading the greatest war in history, and the latter the Squatter King of Black Crag. I also think a jungle start for Wurzag fighting Lizzies would be a lot of fun. But now, looking at the Immortal Empire's live streams, we see that the Forest Goblins have taken over the central jungle. So maybe we'll get, I think his name is Snagblood Grobspit. Maybe we'll get him as a legendary lord and have Forest Goblins introduced as, another type of goblin type. There's Night Goblins, regular Goblins now. And then maybe we'll... The only thing we're missing really is Forest Goblins. Because we have Savage Orcs, Black Orcs, regular Orcs. Yeah, so Forest Goblins would be the basically Savage Orc version of Goblins. So I think it would make sense for us to get one legendary lord that is a Forest Goblin. The Counts may have been the hardest to choose, not including Kemmler. Every other position has changed and become far superior to what was on offer in Game 2. Vlad and Isabella have ousted the usurper Manfred and reclaimed their home in Drakenhof, a much stronger capital, and getting them rule in the Elector Count's system. Please, CA, give Vlad the mechanic, and then I would be happy. Manfred starts in the Shifting Sands, surrounded by neighboring enemies in Cetra, Volkmar, Thoric, Tic-Tac-Toe, and the Wood Elves of the Heart of the Jungle. This may prove to be one of the hardest starting positions in the game. I hope Manfred has a strong starting army and perhaps a unique building or two that will help him survive the onslaught surely coming his way. I'm also very excited to see how the Book of Nagash race will work for him as his new mechanic. All of that being said, my top pick has to be Gorst, purely due to the fact that he will be the first legendary lord that isn't one of the Wood Elves who will start in one of the sacred forests. This makes me wonder if you'll have to be wary of any of the Wood Elf lords randomly teleporting onto your capital and attacking the next turn. What unique buildings might be available for the vampire counts in a sacred forest? I wonder. Gorst neighbors a greater demon in Kugath, who I don't think he will be allies with since his whole beloved family died from a plague. We've also seen in the live streams that I believe it's the Lord's army for Gorst is immune to plague attrition. So basically he voids Nurgle's greatest power. So he also borders Cathay, the Mountains of Morn, Land of Ogres, Imric, the Dark Lands, and the soon-to-be Chaos Dwarves, plus the lands of End and Koresh, and those mysterious inhabitants when those lands open up. Wink, wink. On top of this, he covets Nagashazar, so I wonder how he will interact with the Big Daddy when he arrives to the game. I also am excited to see Gorst's new mechanic, and what discovering new necromancies means exactly. For Chaos, I've split it up into Undivided, Monogod Champions, and Greater Demons, for the sake of this video. I've also included Sigvald in the Undivided section for the same reason. Following the order of Elise, we have Undivided next. Literally every start position is new. Archaon has moved slightly north, and Kolic somewhat east. Archaon is in a good position to gather his power conquering the Chaos Wastes before bringing the end times to the old world. Kolic can still make his way over to Prague to knock down the walls, but there are some bigger walls to the east I think I'd like to smash with Kolic. Sigvald I find interesting because besides Valkia, I can't tell if he's around any real ops. Will the Dark Elves be allies? What about Norsca? Only time will tell. My top pick, though, has to be Be'lakor. I think he has potentially one of the best starting positions in the game. Want to conquer the Empire? How about Brettonia? Kislev? Norsca? Get those demon princes? Ulthuan? Nagaron? The Chaos Waste? All perfectly viable in the early game. Not to mention Be'lakor is the closest thing we will ever have to an undivided Greater Demon. I do hope they consider giving him a Forge of Souls mechanic and a Demon Lords and Heroes. The Forge of Souls mechanic would just give Be'lakor buffs to Soul Grinders and perhaps earlier access. They did make the final Battle of Realms of Chaos around it, after all. Additionally, I am quite excited to see how they've rebuilt his tech tree. Which, after the time of this writing, I've seen his tech tree, and it's possibly one of the best in the game. For my favorite race, we have the Cloven Ones. Torox will always be a total badass, Scarbrand before Scarbrand, so to speak. New enemies for him in Salostra and Grombrindle, and potentially an ally in Valkia, if both of their rages don't force them to kill each other anyway. For this race, we have the Beastmen race. We have the only tie in this video between Morgr and Khazrak. Finally, CA listened to the community and swapped their positions. Now I can destroy the Empire or Athel Loren as the rightful beast man. When Toddy finally comes, we can have out the duel to end the rivalry once and for all. Though he is technically in the game, but you know what I mean, when he gets a full-on rework. Or when he gets added to the game, I mean. Though I will say Khazrak seems almost on top of Middenheim. Makes me wonder if this will shift a bit when Toddy comes. Morgur, being in the classic Beastman position, will be a nice warm-up to build up power before attacking the Azrai in their well-defended home. Dig through the ditches and burn through the witches. We are coming for you, Oak of Ages. And for the big loser today, we have Malagor, who really didn't need to be part of the Thunderdome. That's A. B. His lore is in Talabakland. C. The Marshes of Madness is the home of the Strigoi. Winkety fucking wink, CA. I love you, Malagor, and that's why I think you deserve a better home, like the Blasted Waste in the Darklands. But hey, what the fuck do I know? I also think Malagor can maybe go to the Border Princes. It's another thought. I just think that the Darklands might be a good position. It's a parallel move. He'd be basically in the desert again. Ugh. It's just... Now we've seen that the Sires of Morkane are in the city, the Marshes of Madness in the city of Morkane, and the Ghoul King has taken residence there. Come on. I fully expect, CA, that we are going to get either Usharan, Vorag, or Gashnag. One of those three. We need one of those three in the game. Okay? You can't just put a character called the Ghoul King with a faction called the Sires of Morkane and not be planning to put a Strigoi legendary lord into the game. Okay? Alright, end rant. Moving on. For the Azrai, I am glad that Orion and Durthu will stay to guard the Oak of Ages together, and I'm extremely excited to see the Warhammer 3 facelift Athel Loren will receive. I hope it is as beautiful as I imagine. The sisters, of course, have the most powerful campaign and some interesting new ops, but my top pick has to be Draika. Why Draika? Same reason I like Azag Start, because they can now fight real Kislevites instead of Empire clones. Same reason the Southern Realms area will become much more interesting after a Dogs of War DLC. Draika, also might be the most friendly with Gorst, being in the Haunted Forest. For the Bretts, it's an easy pick. Alberic still needs a lot of love, which I plan to touch on in my next video, but this change could be the start of something beautiful. Wolfheart, rejoice, for a sweet co-op campaign will commence. Marcus hunts dinos, Alberic hunts vampirates. Alternatively, you could try to conquer Lustria together, but I'm going to focus on seafaring personally as Alberic. Raponce is in the Thunderdome, though, and could be one of the first skulls Skarbrand will look to offer to the Skull Throne. A new ally in Volkmar could make for an interesting anti-undead co-op campaign as well. Zeledi is largely unchanged, but Lewin will have to be extremely cautious of the Dark Master, a stone's throw over the pond. Not to mention the plethora of other dark forces that will eventually make their way south. Now, honestly, this is just sad. Norsca. My pick is Wulfric, obviously. Until Throg gets new voice acting and access to greenskin trolls, he's the king of the trolls, okay? He should have all the trolls. I won't be happy with him until this happens. I'm glad Wulfric moved closer to sea lanes, but still think he should get his own unique ones that cover basically every body of water and act more like traversing rifts where you can choose your destination to represent his lore with Seafang. I say sad though because Norsca is awesome. I love Norsca, yet it has fallen so far behind with only 2 lords. I've got 4 more for you, CA. Bjorg, Bearstruck, Mona, Mim, Sail the Faithless, and Lord Mortkin the Black Iron Reaver. Please, keep Mono God characters like Eagle Steerbjorn or Gutrot out of Norsca until those aforementioned lords are added. Okay, we can still get Eagle or Eggle Styrbjorn in Khorne. We could still get Gutrot in Nurgle. Or we could get them as legendary heroes in Norsca, I guess. Or we could get them as legendary lords. But just please add those 4 first. Because I think Norsca should represent the kind of non-chaos side of the North. Somewhat, right? Obviously, everybody in the northern tribes has a connection to chaos in some way. Even if they're good people, they're still gonna have to face the corruption of chaos. But still, that's why I like Bjorg, Monomim, Sael the Faithless, and Lord Mortkin. They represent more of that non-mono god, non-demon side of chaos. And Warriors of Chaos kind of split the middle, obviously. For the Azure, everyone has remained in place except Teclis, who jumped the pond, and Alith Anar moved roughly to his vortex start. Alith would be our big loser purely because he starts in Karankar itself, an extremely important Dark Elf settlement. Lorefully, this controls the shipping lanes into the Sea of Malice and is the Raiders' capital where most of the Black Arcs launch out from. This would be like having Marathi start in Lothern or Gorse start in the Great Hall of Greasus. He could have started in that province and just not had the capital like in the Vortex campaign, but the Clawed Coast would probably be a better province. Teclis, of course, is interesting, being part of the Thunderdome and neighboring Kairos Fateweaver, which should make for a great Wizards duel. It's mostly a parallel move since you're still in the jungle and facing some lizards. Thoric is a reliable ally, but Krokgar may be a bit more ambiguous and unpredictable. So who am I most interested in? Easy pick, Altharion. So if you take into consideration his dual start, he neighbors Skarbrand in the Badlands and is separated by a very small province from Nakari. If 2 Greater Demons is not enough, he also neighbors Malagor and Wurzag in the Badlands. In Tori of Rest, Grom is a stone's throw across the pond, and Noctilus may raid from the south. This may be one of the hardest starting positions in the game. I personally may just abandon the Badlands altogether, though when I played Grim Batman. For the Druchii, we have a lot of interesting changes. Morathi, Hellebron, and Malekith stay put, though Malekith has interesting new opposition in Grombrindle and Valkia. I also very much appreciate Morathi's Slaneshi focus changes. From the Immortal Empire streams I've seen, she is the only lord I've seen receive significant changes to her starting army composition. I was wondering how my starting army rework mod would evolve in Game 3. I love her new starting army, though I may swap the Dread Spears out for a Medusa and the Raven's Heralds. We'll see. Tell me in the comments what kind of changes you might like in my mod. I haven't heard whether modding tools are confirmed with Immortal Empires yet, but cross the fingers. Anyways, the position I find most interesting has to be Lokir. He gets to focus on raiding the new Cathayan race while also just being in that absolutely gorgeous land. Besides the fact that the Kraken Lord with the Black Arc focus will be able to use the most tactically optimal waterway in the game, the Celestial Riverlands. This will give him a stranglehold over Cathay and make him quite a threat to Warhammer China. It also will give him a good path towards Ind, where he might have a quest battle. All that said, I am going to have a lot of fun with Karth in Jurassic Park, capturing big dinos, and Malice so deep in the Chaos Waste could be quite challenging and different. He does have his dual start, but the main army will be quite separated from sea lanes, unlike all the other Dark Elves, so I think he will generally be the weakest faction of the Druchii. For the Lizzies, Mazda, Tehen, Tic Tac, Croc, and Rock are roughly unchanged, besides minor shifting and new enemies. Oxyodal is my top pick for most interesting, mostly due to the fact that the enemies he's actually supposed to face are now available in the game. For me, he was unplayable in Warhammer 2 simply due to no demons. Another big part is, besides perhaps maybe Kairos, he has no real competition to conquer the Southern Chaos Realms, at least for now. Maybe you just conquer here and then focus on completing your Visions of the Old Ones quests. I think Oxyodal's campaign could be greatly improved with the introduction of Chaos Portals and the Chaos Wastes that would essentially act like sea lines. But plan to cover this more in another video. I also think adding the Realms of Chaos in the corner of the map could add good opportunities for Oxyodal's Vision quests, where he might be the only non-Chaos character who could teleport in and out of the Chaos realms. I might have picked Nakai, but besides possibly fighting Cathayans, I don't think his position is all that exciting yet. When more Cathayans, demons, and the mysterious inhabitants to the non-traversable south arrive to the game, then he will be extremely interesting. He's close to the sea lanes as well, if he gets homesick. For the Ska, the rat folk, Skrolk should be more interesting in the new fleshed out Lustria. It will get more interesting when the Dogs of War / Southern Realms race pack comes. Queek is in a good position and is just waiting for a rework to the 8 Peaks race. Tretch is glad he's home, but is waiting in anticipation for some Chaos stunties to arrive to the game. Snicketch and Throt are a near tie for me. Snicketch over in the beautiful lands of Cathay, building undercities and assassinating through Warhammer China, should make his campaign way more interesting than Warhammer 2. But I also think the East is fairly bare at the moment, and will become more interesting as more content is released. So, my top pick is Throt, much for the same reasons I picked Azhag and Draika. Finally, I can fight true Kislevites here. Besides that, though, with Festus and Azazel nearby in the Chaos Wastes, they're opened up in the north, they could be a slew of possible allies or interesting foes. Nobody has moved for TK. Katep now has Gromby to the north, which I'm unsure how they will feel about each other. Arkan and Cetra have new enemies in the Thunderdome and Skarbrand and Volkmar. In Manfred, Arkan has an ally and Cetra has an enemy. Khalida is basically unchanged. My top pick? Come on, motherfucker. Cetra does not serve and he's surrounded by enemies that would love to prove otherwise. He is at the center of the Thunderdome. August 23rd, we will show them why he's called the Imperishable. The Vampirates are largely unchanged except for Celastra, who is my pick. Now, up in Naggaroth, she'll have some new enemies, and at the very least will be separated from the southern Great Ocean like all the other Vampire lords. Her lore says she was a Brettonian in life and wants to sink Ulthuan and Unlife, so I think after I set up a good foothold on the coast of Naggaroth, I will conquer Ulthuan and then the Brett homeland. Speaking of Bretts, Luther should have some fun fighting his new neighbor Alberic. Salt Spite, I think, needs a rework. Perhaps when Dogs of War comes, she becomes a hybrid lord. She also has Scrag as a neighbor, but I think that's kinda dumb. But I'll get to that later. Quick side note, I'll say it whenever I get the chance. I think all races should get a rework, however minor or major. Additionally, I think every race should get at least one more legendary lord, even the Vampire Coast. Now we know they have a minor faction in the Jade River Delta, in Cathay. This could be an interesting position for perhaps a Jade Vampire. Personally, I would rather the Jade Vampire be a Cathayan proper hybrid lord, so that we may get a Sons of Stromfell's Sharkman character for Vampire Coast. This would help introduce a fish people subrace to the Vampirates, and bring merworms, Scythe-worms, and Pago-worms to the roster. End side round. Speaking of the East, Cathay is just generally, as of this writing, in desperate need of content, and is not really quite interesting yet. I think Cathay itself is interesting, and in time may become one of my favorites, but right now it's a pretty not so good place. There are a lot of units I would like to see added, like Jade Lions, Onyx Crowmen, the Celestial Dragon Monks, and a whole sub-race for Monkey Men. Until then, Zhao is my favorite character, but I think Miao has a more interesting position in defense of the Great Bastion. For the Ogres, Greasus is perfect, but Scrag's position to me is lame. I expect Goldfag Maneater to be a future legendary lord, along with Gark Ironskin. I think the Border Princess is the perfect place for Goldfag. Scrag makes more sense in the Gristle Valley, in his Realms of Chaos position. That, or move him home to the Mountains of Morn to be close to the Great Maw. Or move him closer to the Galleon's Graveyard, which is the ass end of the Great Maw. And the Great Maw is a hole that goes through the planet. So this could be the Isthmus coast or the Amara swamps, or perhaps the island off southern Yvres. Personally, I just think Scrag is in Goldfag's position, and to me that's lame. Hope this changes. For Kislev is cool. Surrounded by Throg, Azazel, Festus, Dryka, Von Karstens, and Azhag, how could this be a dull campaign? I would feel remiss to not pick Katarin or Kastaltin, but I'm going to. Firstly, because Boris is my spirit animal. Secondly, Kat and Kos basically have the same campaign, whilst Boris is Oxyodal's opposite Doom guy in the Northern Chaos Wastes. Thing is, he's not far from the Motherland either, so you can just send a hero down to make contact and confederate. Otherwise, I'm going to focus on conquering my demons. For the greater demons, besides Nakari, their positions were pretty unexpected, but I've warmed up to them mostly. Kairos could be interesting for the same reason as Oxyodal in being able to conquer the southern wastes early with nearly no opposition, and the techless duels should be fun. Kugath will eventually become the most interesting as the eastern factions and races get more content. Skarbrand would be my top pick, it's just that I think the Thunderdome is a shit show purely because he's there. I think if he were elsewhere it would be less of a headache for every other lord in the Southlands, but playing him should be a lot of fun. That being said, I think my top pick is Nakari. First, it's the first non-high elf and the first evil character to have a position on Ulthuan. Second, he will have the easiest access to the Sword of Cain that anyone has ever had. Or at the very least, can block the Ilarial AI from getting it. Most importantly, he can finally get revenge on the Sons of Anarion, or at least Tyrion. For our last section, we have the new DLC champions. Not going into huge detail here because we've all been following these guys closely, but my pick is Festus, because he starts in the Empire as a Chaos character. Azazel being in reach of all human races, except Cathay for seduction is amazing. Valkia fighting Gromby, Sigvald and Dark Elves, amazing. Village attacking Cathay at the Great Bastion, cool stuff. But again, something about being embedded in the Empire as Festus just sounds like a lot of fun to me. And that about covers it. Tell me in the comments, which positions do you find the most interesting and why? Which ones do you think could or should change besides Elithanar we already know is changing? Which lords are you going to play first? If I had to give my top 5 for all lords that I want to play first, I think it would be Be'lakor, Gromby, Oxyodal, Azhag, and Volkmar. I can't wait to see how their starting armies have changed. From what I've seen in the live stream so far, they are definitely improved, but remaking my mod for starting armies will still be necessary. At least for myself. If there are any lords you would like to see start with specific units, leave that in the comments below. Anyways, I know it's been almost a week since my last video. I wish I could crank them out faster. Alas, to do the best I can with them takes time, as I'm new to this and I'm far from a master editor at this point in time. Thank you for your patience, and if you'd like it if I were able to make more videos at a higher quality and faster rate, every like, comment, and subscribe goes a long way. I tip my hat to you, ladies and gents, for any support you can give. I appreciate. Look for another weekly roundup and a video about shipbuilding lords in the coming days. The weekly roundup I meant to do days ago, but there is such an influx of Immortal Empires news from the big content creators having their embargoes dropped that I just frankly can't keep up with it. I don't have early access like they do, so there's just no possible way. But anyways, I'm still going to try to do something with that. But anyways, guys, I wish you strength of spirit as we hold out this next week and a half or so. Farewell.